Greetings. Thank you for selecting this podcast. This podcast is one of two related podcasts. I call them my sister podcasts. They may be listened to in either order. Both podcasts address this issue. Why do East Asian students always outperform American students on the international comparative tests? This podcast discusses how the culture of their schools enhances the academic excellence of East Asian children. My sister podcast discusses how the culture of their homes enhances the academic excellence of those same children. I am Dr. Cornelius N. Grove. I earned an EDD degree, Doctor of Education, from Columbia University. Earlier in my career, I taught at Columbia University, New School University, and Beijing Foreign Studies University. Over 2 decades, I've had no university role at all. I'm what's known as an independent scholar. Since 1990, my day job has been as managing partner of the global business leadership consultancy, Grovewell, LLC. You can learn a lot about it at grovewell.com. The international comparative tests enable comparisons of the in-school learning of students from different nations. They were first administered in the late 1960s. Western scholars based in Hong Kong noticed that on the early tests, Chinese and Japanese students were significantly outperforming the American students. They labeled this a paradox. Everyone knew that schools in the United States were very well equipped and, more importantly, used progressive teaching methods. It was a very different situation in East Asia. So the Hong Kong scholars began doing research in East Asia. Over time, more and more other scholars joined them. Between 1970 and today, approximately 1,000 studies have been carried out. Hundreds of researchers from around the world have looked at everything that could possibly account for the academic superiority of East Asian students. Those 50 years of research have revealed that there are 2 basic reasons for the East Asian students' academic superiority: their schools and their homes. In this podcast, I'll discuss highlights of what those 50 years of East Asian research have revealed about how the culture of the school contributes to academic excellence. My book on this topic is A Mirror for Americans. You can find out a lot about it at amirrorforamericans.info. In this podcast, I will discuss 4 major topics. 1, East Asian preschools. 2, foundations of primary schooling. 3, delivery of lessons in academic subjects. And 4, my conclusion. My first major topic today is East Asian preschools, specifically one common type of Japanese preschool. Researchers refer to this type of preschool as relationship-oriented. A Japanese preschool is where young children learn how to live. In Japanese homes, children don't learn how to live with peers in society. Homes have a unique culture, often described by the Japanese word wagamama, which means self-indulgent and self-centered. So beginning on their first day in preschool, children learn how to live in a society in which the well-being and harmony of one's group eclipse one's personal concerns. 3 ways in which Japanese preschools are very different from U.S. preschools are the following. First, children spend up to half the day, up to 2 hours a day, in unrestricted free play. Unrestricted means unrestricted. The youngsters have the run of the building and grounds, corridors, classrooms, stairwells, gym, indoor play spaces, and outdoor playground. They also have unrestricted access to a wide range of toys and all kinds of materials, including water. They have astonishingly little adult supervision. Their play is genuinely free. Second, teachers ignore many altercations between the children, even physical fights. Children are encouraged and allowed to resolve many of their own disputes. Teachers deliberately short materials, such as sandbox shovels, in order to provoke disputes. The teachers say, if we always intervene, how will they learn to deal with their peers? Third, the teacher's role is to help the children develop strong ties to each other and to the group. They seize opportunities to develop a feeling that being excluded is undesirable, and they foster peer group ties that emphasize community over personal needs and wants. A Japanese preschool is also where young children learn how to learn. Visitors to Japanese primary schools have long marveled at the effortless efficiency with which teachers conduct lessons. Transitions between activities are exceptionally smooth by American standards, often prompted by just a few words from the teacher. For example, get into your 4-person groups. Now, how does this come about? It comes about because the children are taught and practice behaviors that actively support efficient teaching. If you've ever learned a Japanese martial art, karate or judo, or tea ceremony or flower arrangement, you're likely to be familiar with the concept of kata. Kata is usually translated as form, meaning way of doing in the sense of an established, orderly process. Kata drills establish both mental memory and muscle memory. Let's focus on the children's deliberately taught behavior patterns for classroom learning. Preschool and first grade children are taught, and they practice how to arrange items both on and inside their desks, how to sit with backs straight, hands on knees, eyes focused forward, how to raise their hand to indicate a public contribution, how to stand and speak if called upon by the teacher or another pupil, how to come to the front of the room to publicly present their contribution, and very importantly, how to rearrange desks for small groups and how to restore those desks for a whole group learning situation. One anthropologist called instruction into how to learn learner-trained learning. The benefits of explicitly training and drilling children's classroom behavior are, first, teachers rarely need to act in an authoritarian manner towards the pupils. Students actively share responsibility for the efficient progress of lessons. And Japanese teachers spend almost 50% more time per lesson actually teaching content. I believe that this is a key reason why Japanese children always outperform American children on the international comparative tests. By the way, in China, similar learner-trained learning occurs in preschools and first grade. My second major topic today concerns the foundations of East Asian primary schooling. First, let's consider how East Asians regard children's learning. One scholar began her research by wondering what comes to mind for Americans and Chinese when they think about learning. So she actually asked them 8 examples from Americans of what learning brings to their minds are study, think, teach, read, discover, understand, library, and brain. 4 examples from Chinese on what learning brings to their minds are keep on learning as long as you live. Make a firm resolution to study. Study as if thirsting or hungering. Take great pains to study. Comparing the differences in what people think about, the researcher noticed that the Chinese think about matters related to one's heart. They are passionate about learning. Americans think about matters related to one's brain. They have a practical approach to learning. The Chinese think about resolve and disciplined, persevering effort. The Americans think about, oh, this is a really good idea. Might be interesting too. The Chinese think about a lifelong quest for self and social perfection. The Americans think about a task with a beginning and an end. So, with respect to children's in-school learning, East Asians have the following assumptions. First, learning is about instilling virtue conceived in terms of group welfare. There is little interest in encouraging children's uniqueness or in catering to their personal needs. Second, learning is about transmitting the accumulated wisdom of society. Think kata. There's little interest in fostering self-expression or creativity. That'll come later. First, master the basics. Third, lessons are designed in a way that conforms to the subject's logic. There's little interest in lesson design being guided by a need to motivate, to ensure that the children enjoy themselves, or to draw out their unique personalities, nothing like that. Finally, learning is about a challenging mental struggle for each child. There's little interest in specifically trying to make lessons effortless or engaging or fun. Continuing with my second topic, foundations, I'd like to turn now to how East Asians regard classroom teaching. 3 analogies can help us grasp the culture of teaching in East Asia. One analogy discussed by the East Asian researchers is that of the virtuoso performer. East Asian teachers don't exactly deliver lessons, they perform them. The dynamic is one of an actor on a stage. The class is not a group of diverse and unique individuals. The class is one audience, like a theater audience. The teacher performs for the class as a whole. She impresses and affects her audience by her performance, at the same time that she is transmitting knowledge to them. A second useful analogy is that of the academic expert. East Asian teachers, as is well known, thoroughly master their subject or field, far beyond what is true for most teachers in the United States. One group of researchers gave 4 difficult math questions to Chinese and American math teachers. The Chinese teachers responded very well. The U.S. teachers, well, not so well. Then the researchers gave the same 4 questions to Chinese 9th graders. They outperformed the American teachers. East Asian teachers, as experts, don't hesitate to guide learners, including unsparing critiques of their bumbling attempts. This is expected by everyone, pupils included. A third analogy notes that the teacher-pupil relationships in East Asia are similar to those of a coach and an athlete. A coach instructs an athlete what to do, for example, certain drills, and how to do it, for example, correct techniques. The coach serves as a model and a mentor. The coach trains, corrects errors, pushes the athlete. You can see that this analogy goes hand in hand with that of the academic expert. Underpinning all three of these analogies is the Pan-Asian tradition of senior-junior relationships. The senior party feels responsibility for the excellent growth and development of the junior, while the junior party feels loyalty and respect toward the senior. My third major topic today concerns the actual delivery of academic lessons in East Asian primary schools. The standard in East Asia is whole class learning. This is often mischaracterized by Westerners as being simply East Asian teachers lecturing to pupils. This is not true. Let's consider whole class learning in terms of three roles. First, the role of the teacher, then the role of the pupils, and let's not forget the role of the knowledge to be learned. The role of East Asian teachers is often mischaracterized as authoritarian, which implies punishment, rigidity, and emotional coldness. This is not accurate in the case of East Asia. East Asian teachers rarely have any need to be authoritarian because, first of all, the children are receptive to classroom learning as discussed in my sister podcast. Secondly, children have received and practiced learner-trained learning in preschool and first grade. And third, there's that deep Asian tradition of senior-junior relationships in East Asia. So children are respectful to their elders. The appropriate term for East Asian primary teachers is not authoritarian, but directive. As respected experts, East Asian teachers plan, prepare, and then actively direct the pupils' learning process. The role of East Asian pupils is frequently mischaracterized as passive. This is not accurate. Consider the religious service analogy. What behavior is expected from someone who attends a religious service? Well, one thing is that they're expected to follow the lead of a respected senior person, such as the priest, who has years of preparation for fulfilling that role. Second, the person attending watches, listens, and remains attentively quiet. Above all, he or she is to not interrupt the flow by jumping in with his questions or concerns. Another role is to actively participate at the leader's direction. For example, joining in singing. Now that analogy has its uses, but it falls short because it suggests that the pupils are passive. This is not possible in the case of East Asian primary schools. The pupil's role is to actively respond, discuss, and participate at the teacher's direction. Teachers constantly pose questions, challenging problems. They call on the pupils by name, not for volunteers. They call for pupils to come up to the board and give their solutions. And they request other types of all-pupil participation as well, such as get into your four-person groups. East Asian lessons are accurately characterized as whole class interactive learning. The role of the knowledge to be learned in East Asia is to be constantly the focus of the lesson, much more constantly than during most primary school lessons in the United States. One research team compared interactive time on task in the US and China. The portion of the class period in which the class was interactively on task in China was 81%. The portion of the class period during which the class was interactively on task in the United States was 44%. You should also know that classes in East Asia are never interrupted by all-school public address announcements, by lunch count monitors, or by pupils being pulled out for compensatory instruction, or for practicing music or sports, or for preparing for special events. None of those things happens in East Asia. Knowledge delivery time is sacred, and it is protected from unnecessary interruptions. Now let's consider specifically mathematics lessons. Mathematics teaching in China is one of the most heavily studied aspects of education in East Asia. I'm going to share 4 of the less technical aspects that research has revealed. One is the use of the problem of the day. Next, the fact that pupils, not the teacher, are the arbiters of correct and incorrect. Next, the use that teachers make of pupils' incorrect answers. And finally, teachers' insistence that pupils correctly state formal mathematical reasoning. East Asian math teachers begin each lesson with the problem of the day. The problem of the day is not a quiz, not a drill, not a review, and not a homework check. It's a never previously encountered type of problem, drawing on some of what the pupils already know, but deliberately exceeding their knowledge, if only slightly. The pupils are given approximately 10 minutes to work on that problem individually or in spontaneous groups. The pupils' frustration and confusion are viewed as a vital part of their learning process. At the end of the work period, the pupils, in turn, share their solutions with the class. The new material exemplified by the problem then becomes the focus of the day's lesson. East Asian math teachers are not the arbiters of correct and incorrect. The pattern in the United States is that the teacher announces whether any solution is right or wrong. In East Asia, teachers usually leave the right-wrong determination to the pupils. When an answer is stated, the teacher asks the class whether it's correct or incorrect. Even if it's correct, much attention is paid to the reasoning behind its correctness. Well, what happens, though, if the pupils agree that the answer is incorrect? Well, East Asian math teachers use pupils' errors as paths to more complete understanding. In the U.S., teachers tend to gloss over pupil errors so as not to cause loss of face. In East Asia, teachers frequently use a pupil's error as a path for exploration. She might say, "Yes, class, that answer is erroneous, but what was the reasoning process that yielded that error?" Finally, East Asian math teachers insist on correct formal proofs and deductive reasoning. In the United States, proofs and deductive reasoning are regarded as nice to know about. It's believed, though, that asking pupils to formally state these things is boring or worse, demotivating. In East Asia, teachers expect formal mathematical language to be used fully and correctly. Formal language is held up as foundational to math, essential to full understanding. I'd like to discuss one additional factor that contributes to East Asians' superior performance. East Asian teachers emphasize their pupils learning the basics of the subject. By the basics, I'm referring to the foundational underpinnings of the subject. For example, we've just considered math teaching. Formal proofs and explicit deductive reasoning, correctly stated, are the basics of mathematics. They are emphasized, not glossed over. Mastering the basics is seen as an indispensable first step to mastering the domain of knowledge. It securely grounds each learner's advance toward higher level challenges, toward outstanding performance, and even toward creative contributions to the domain. Recall the discussion of kata, the right way of doing something that everyone should master. Mastering the kata, the basics, yes, it does require imitation and repetition. After I had worked my way through well over 100 research reports about East Asian primary schools, I came to a clear conclusion. I'd like to share that with you now. I'm confident that you are well aware that here in the United States, it's widely agreed that the only worthwhile kind of classroom lesson is student-centered. So how can we best characterize lessons in East Asia? Are they student-centered? Are they teacher-centered? Or are they knowledge-centered? Most Westerners believe that East Asian lessons are teacher-centered. This is not accurate. What is accurate is that East Asian primary school lessons are knowledge-centered. To an extent rarely seen here in the United States, East Asian pupils and their teacher are united in their attention to the knowledge to be learned during the lesson, with the pupil's attention to the knowledge being actively steered or directed by the teacher. I amassed very easily 12 pieces of evidence for East Asian knowledge centeredness. Here are 6, and I've discussed all of these. First, learner-trained learning during preschool and first grade. Second, teachers' superior command of their academic subject area. Third, teachers' lesson design is driven by the internal logic of the content being taught, not by factors such as a need to motivate, to have fun, to draw out pupil creativity, and so forth. 4, attention to incorrect answers. Faulty reasoning is identified. This yields deeper understanding. 5, teachers focus on the basics, the elements that are foundational to further learning. And finally, whole class interactive learning, continuously involving pupils with the day's topic. Here is the big idea that I hope you'll take away from this podcast today. In terms of what the school contributes, the reason why East Asian students always outperform American students on the international comparative tests is because East Asian lessons are knowledge-centered. In closing, I'd like you to know that I have prepared an annotated bibliography of the 118 research reports on which I relied most heavily. These are my own annotations. They are not authors' abstracts. You'll find all 118 of them at amirrorforamericans.info. Thank you for attending my podcast, and thank you to IAIR for making it possible. I invite you to attend my sister podcast, which discusses how the academic excellence of East Asian children is enhanced by the culture of their homes.